After more than 4 years of waiting, Rick Singer will finally get sentenced today in the very popular Operation Varsity Blues scandal. Before I get into the case, welcome everyone. Happy New Year. I'm so grateful that you continue to return to White Collar Advice. If you're new here, welcome. We know you're all busy and we want to prove worthy of your attention and time. So I'm going to jump right in with the upcoming sentencing today of Rick Singer. For some background, the government is asking for 6 years in federal prison. His lawyers, naturally, as so many do, are asking for home confinement and 750 hours of community service, or if prison is part of the sanction, they don't think he should serve more than 6 months in federal prison. Right out of the gate, that's a problem because you have such a huge chasm of the government asking for 6 years and the lawyers asking for home confinement. Probably would have made more sense and could have advanced his agenda to get a shorter prison term had he asked for 18 months or 2 years. What's done is done, we'll see. I suspect he'll get 4 to 5 years in prison, primarily because the scheme lasted for so long, and it would be hard for his lawyers to argue he's a man of character when for more than 20 years he led a scheme that defrauded schools and students to get into the right school through honest and hard work. So I expect him to get a lengthy federal prison sentence. Quickly, for some background, our company, White Collar Advice, has been heavily involved in the Varsity Blues case since late 2018. A defendant in the case, a parent, retained us and it became public. And through that, our company did a great deal of media, seized a lot of media opportunities that really started with a viral article in the Washington Post. From there, we had opportunities with CNN and Fox, organizations all around the world. I had the opportunity to contribute to a lengthy podcast with Dr. Phil discussing how these parents in trouble never imagined in a million years they would become immersed in the criminal justice system, and their response to it, and what they could do to position themselves for success, namely the shortest sentence in the most favorable institution, preferably their home. And you saw a lot of parents respond differently. You had Felicity Huffman immediately accept responsibility, and she got 14 days in prison. Others delayed and waited. Some even went to trial. You have found the coaches have tended to get the longest sentence, namely coaches who are taking money to admit these students into school. And I suspect through all of it, Rick Singer, even though he cooperated so extensively, will absolutely receive the longest sentence. I found it interesting, the government's approach to getting Rick Singer to have these parents, get themselves into trouble on the phone. Right? So the government told Rick Singer, when you call these parents on a recording line, we want you to tell them that your IRS is under audit. And I want you to discuss with them this audit and then again to how these made these contributions to the nonprofit. Essentially, they told Rick Singer, you can lie on this recorded line as a government informant to get these parents to talk about their criminal conduct. Now go to the flip side. If a defendant ever lies in an investigation or when meeting with the government, they could charge him with obstruction of justice. If he's under oath, it can be perjury. So there's two different approaches here. The government can sort of act with impunity under the guise of justice, and they can say one thing in order to ensure a certain outcome, a conviction. But if the defendant does it, they can be charged with a new crime. I addressed this in a documentary I filmed with Netflix in July of 19 that later led to a movie on Netflix called Operation Varsity Blues, where Matthew Modine played Rick Singer. I love Matthew Modine. He was in my favorite movie from high school, Vision Quest. But I point this out to kind of show the cynicism and the approach the government can take to get convictions. I would argue they didn't need to tell Rick Singer to lie or engage in a ruse in order to get these parents to talk about their criminal conduct. That's the path they went down, and it seemed to work because all these parents pled guilty, and the lion's share of them went to prison, most of whom are now home, and many of them are off probation. For transparency, in total, we work with 10 parents in this case, but not Rick Singer or any of those who cooperated with and helped lead to these convictions. Also, I'm not excusing the conduct of our clients. They broke the law, they pled guilty, and they continue to suffer and work daily to make amends for their bad choices. In fact, many of them have used this experience as a tool or an asset to contribute and give back. And yes, many of them recognize the opportunity and privilege they have had, that they took shortcuts. There are consequences, and I admire so many of them for working to become better. It has not been by accident. The government's attorney, or the prosecutor, Eric Rosen, who is now a defense attorney, when this case hit, he was probably so excited, right? Because it fell into his lap. It would be national media attention. If you Google the initial interviews that he did from the U.S. Attorney's Office, you got the impression that these parents are going to serve like 100 years in prison, 50 years in prison. You can go back and Google the Department of Justice press releases that state how long these parents might serve in prison with all of these charges, yet in the end, I think the probation report identified there were no victims, there was no financial loss, and as a result, the guidelines fell dramatically. The lion's share of people pled guilty, and you saw sentences of 14 months, 2 months, 5 months, 9 months, and again, the longest sentence to date has been the coaches, who are held to a different standard, primarily because of the length that the fraud went on versus like one time for Felicity Huffman. Big difference. As I address Rick Singer's sentencing, let me point out something that I think he and a lion's share of defendants make mistakes on. I read online this morning that his lawyer said he has been unable to work because of the national attention of the Varsity Blues case. Nonsense. Nonsense. Rick Singer has said that even though he engaged in this fraud, there were scores of students and families he helped over the years by doing it the right way. If he played such a role in transforming the lives of some of these students and helping, if there are people who are grateful for the work that he did, one of them potentially could have offered him a job. One of them. But even if no one was, even if no one would hire him, let me tell you what you need to do if you're a federal defendant, if you are unemployable or you think you're unemployable. You need to document that you are looking for work. Elizabeth Holmes sat at home for 4 years, no worky. Rick Singer sat at home the last 4 years, did nothing other than cooperate, no worky. If you can't find a job, show that you're looking for work. Document it. Why? Well, we've interviewed federal judges, 2 of whom had the courage to come on our YouTube channel, and I've interacted with many of them at sentencing summits and whatnot. And they have said, you need to build a new record as a law-abiding citizen. You need to demonstrate that you can do it the right way and pay taxes. So would it have been in Rick Singer's interest over the last 4 years to work, or at least show that he's looking for work so he can build a new record? Part of the problem with some white-collar defendants, not all, but with some, they feel like some work is beneath their skill set. They wouldn't drive for Uber. They wouldn't deliver bread at 4 o'clock in the morning. When I came home from prison, I picked up phones as a receptionist for several months, and I did it with pride because all work is honorable and I had dignity. And I will tell you, I was the best damn receptionist in Calabasas. I was so grateful for the opportunity. So if I were a betting man, I would bet he didn't even look for work. And if he was offered a job, it was beneath what he thinks his skill set should be. Struggling to embrace the reality as a convicted felon, you're starting over and building a new record. So that's how I'll close. Rick Singer, after 4 long years of waiting, I have no doubt it's been difficult for him. He will finally get clarity, and even if he gets 60 months in federal prison, there's a path with First Step Act, Second Chance Act, good time, potentially the drug program that could take a year off his sentence. There's a chance on a 60-month sentence that he could be out of there in 18, 24, 25 months, which I know for some people would not be long enough. Thank you for watching. Let's see if I'm right on my prediction. Again, Happy New Year to all of you.